My goodness, what a blowout of epic proportions in this Jackson County sales tax vote to keep the Royals and the Chiefs in Jackson County. Of course, the Chiefs would have done renovations and upgrades to Arrowhead Stadium, and the Royals wanted to move downtown. The story here is that money is important in politics, but with the right messaging, it's not everything. And also, the story is that money cannot buy votes in what was a terribly run and organized campaign. It can buy you a lot. Money does a lot of things for a lot of people. It can buy you peace and prosperity. It can buy you a stress-free existence and many things in life, but it can't buy you everything if the fundamentals are not there. And for the Yes campaign, the fundamentals were never there. The messaging was never there. They were always chasing their tail right up until the 11th hour when they were seeking endorsements from the mayor, from Gwen Grant, from all these people that, let's be honest, were not going to move the needle. If Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and Bobby Witt Jr. were not going to get this thing done, beloved figures in this town, sports heroes, what made you think politicians were going to get this thing done in this town? What made you think 11th hour buyouts of hucksters in made-up CBA agreements were going to get this thing done? There were too many factions of people who were voting no, and they were voting no for different reasons. This is not as black and white as some people want to make it into. This is not a big win for KC tenants. This is not all about, KC tenants stopping the billionaire owners. No, that was part of it, but it wasn't all of it. If you break down the vote, it was 58-42, the no vote beating the yes vote. I mean, that is a massive number. We're talking 16 points, right? 58-42. But it was 58-42 in KC-Mo proper, and then it was 58-42 across the county at large, which means different factions of different groups voted no for very different reasons. Yes, you had the KC tenants. Of course, we know what their messaging was about. You had the Crossroads folks. You know what their messaging was about. You go to other parts of Jackson County. You had people who didn't want to do things like go downtown to a baseball game. You had some people who wanted to stay at the K. And I know you'll hear it time and time again. This is not about saving the K. The team's not staying there. That's fine. But there are still people who showed up to vote to send their message as they saw fit. There were probably half a dozen reasons that people would have gone to the polls to vote no. There was only one reason that people would have ever considered voting yes. And that is that they thought this was a good thing for the county. It was an extension of the sales tax. And they figured, whatever, let's keep this thing going. But there were too many different reasons that people decided to vote no. They also got screwed on their tax assessments last year by this county. Don't overlook that. This was one of the most recent chances and biggest chances to go to the polls and basically tell the county to pound sand. They're getting screwed and they've had enough. And they took it out on the teams. Is that entirely fair? Yeah, maybe not. But that's how politics and voting works. All of that played into what took place. And now this thing has completely crashed and burned on both of these teams. Now they'll be back. They're not running away. They're not leaving for Nashville tomorrow. They're not going to KCK tomorrow. That's not happening. They will be back. I firmly believe that. And don't overlook the threats as well. The threats did not sit well with a lot of people. And I'll tell you something, a little inside baseball here on this. I asked some people on the yes side or people involved with the yes side why they, and I asked this of John Sherman. I asked this of Mark Donovan when he was on the show this week. I said, why did the yes campaign decide to break out we're going to have to explore all our options? Why did they do that? And they did it because basically they were told to do it. Their campaign consultants convinced them that by threatening to leave, it would help them last night. And you want to talk about something backfiring? Well, that backfired, all right. People do not like being threatened. They do not like being told, give me your money, and if not, I'm out. But we're such good partners, but if you don't do what we're telling you to do, we're out of here. People don't like that. That was one of the many moments that, as we look back on the last few months, was a turning point in this campaign. The calls, the texts, the social media reaction we got when the team started breaking out the whole, bully tactics of you better do as we say, and if not, we're out, or we're going to explore our options. Of course, they framed it as such. That pissed off a lot of people. And in a very tough political environment, that was not about left versus right. It was not about blue versus red. There was an element of the bourgeoisie versus the proletariat here, in terms of you had people who went to games, who were part of the upper crust, who didn't understand why you would vote no, who didn't feel the 3/8 cent sales tax, who didn't really feel inflation from the last bunch of years in this country, versus more of the working class who said, you know what, I'm getting screwed, and I'm certainly, while I may not feel 3/8 of a cent sales tax, I may not feel $50, $100 a year, I'm not going to do it right now. I'm not in the mood. And I'm certainly not in the mood to get bullied by perceived billionaire owners who I've done nothing but support during my years as a resident and a fan of these teams. And that should not get overlooked when we look back and we Monday morning quarterback this whole thing. I said for weeks I thought it'd be a coin flip. I never would have seen a 16-point blowout in favor of no. But then when you break it all down, people were motivated. They were motivated to send a message. They were motivated to be frustrated, to be pissed. And the no side was always more motivated than the yes side, come to think of it. Now, I thought the yes side would hang in there. I thought they might eke out a 1-point win or something like that. But the no vote showed up, and it showed up in a big way. And it's not exclusively because of KC tenants. It's not exclusively because of one thing or one thing only. It's because of a plethora of things. And the teams found themselves chasing their tails right up until Monday when they were buying off some of these made-up groups. And that's just one of those things that when they look back on the job that they did, when they look back at how this campaign was rolled out, there'll be a lot of missteps along the way. But the way they were working until literally Monday night, thinking that this was somehow going to turn in their favor, showed me how out of touch in many ways they were with where the average Jackson County resident and average Jackson County citizen was. They were caught up in their consultant higher-end bubble, and they weren't where the folks were.
And a literal perfect storm occurred.
Yeah, this was a perfect storm. And they ran right into it, and they didn't realize it was coming. That's the other problem. If you know a perfect storm's happening, at least be aware of it, right? If that hurricane's blasting up the coast, if that EF5 tornado's bearing down on your house, know it's coming. Take cover. And they didn't do it. 913-408-7957. We are going to, of course, be hearing from you all morning long. This show will be heavy on you, your reaction, what this means for the teams going forward, and we will hear from some of the biggest power players in all this as well. The owner of the Royals, John Sherman, Mark Donovan, they spoke last night, Frank White, Sly James, all coming up. We are going to get to Frank White. Let's hear from Frank White next and what he had to say on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM.
I feel good about it. I think it's about doing what's right. And I think you hear the noise in the background. All these folks here in the crossroads, they just want to do what's right. They just want a better deal. They want a more equitable deal. They want the teams at the table negotiating a beneficial agreement that's going to benefit the county itself.
That was Frank White last night down in the Crossroads, audio courtesy of Channel 9 KMBC, which had that conversation with Frank White after the no vote came out on top 58-42 in a blowout win. I mean, you're talking about a yes campaign that had Patrick Mahomes on its side, Travis Kelce, back-to-back Super Bowls, Bobby Witt Jr., $3 million. And it got smoked. Money is important in politics. It's not everything. And I think that there is going to be PTSD for a while from people around the Royals and the Chiefs for how badly this thing went up in flames. They don't realize what hit them. They are, I mean, listen, if they've listened to this show, they knew this was possible. If they listen to their sports talk lackeys who don't know their elbow from their ass, then they probably thought this was going to pass. But if they listened to real people and they listened to this show discuss real issues, if they knew what had been happening in this county over the last bunch of months, this would not be a surprising outcome to them. And I think, unfortunately, now listen, John Sherman said last week on this show that he listens to this show. So we know, we know he might be out there. And we appreciate that. That's the beauty of this show. It reaches a lot of people. However, I don't think it reached enough folks in the Yes campaign because they didn't realize what was happening on the ground. Whether it was Sly James to people in ownership and all people that I've dealt with and personally I have no issue with and I like. But they misread the marketplace. And that results in a 16-point blowout. Jonathan's in Kansas City. First up on KCMO. Jonathan, good morning.
Morning. How you doing?
I'm doing well, my man. What's happening?
All right. So I worked the early voting for 2 weeks. And obviously, we can't talk about it, in the polling place. But at the end, that's its own machine. And that has people from around the city because there's only 3 satellites. And so it runs a tape. So it can give you a summary of at least how the early voting went. And so when I looked at it, at first I was kind of believing all the hype of the media. Oh, the yes is inevitable and they're spending all this money. And then I looked at that tape. The no was overwhelming. And I'm like, okay, more people since COVID are voting early. And so if you're losing an early vote in most elections, you're done. Like, this isn't like 30 years ago where most people show up on election day anymore. That's changing. And so then the next few days, obviously I'm not able to do anything about it. But when I would listen to the media, all I could do was helplessly hear them, oh, this is inevitable. I'm like, yeah, I don't, all I was thinking in my mind is, I don't think so. And I guess it just proves, like, when the media says, oh, 2016 is inevitable, Hillary's going to win, 2022 is inevitable, there's going to be a red wave. You can't always listen to the media. They don't always know what's going on the ground. And the other problem is, going back to the consultants, as I said, there's more early voting going on. And you see this a lot with campaigns, including national campaigns. These consultants, they still think it's like 30 years ago. And it's like more people are voting early. So like when you have a campaign with a lot of issues like this was, a lot of moving parts, you got to get those done months in advance, which was a common criticism. Like, you guys are doing this all 11th hour. Like, your campaigns, like, you need to fire your campaign people and hire the people who, go, hey, you're doing early voting, get all the issues out before then, and then maximize the early turnout. And they just didn't do all that. They didn't. I think it's a good learning lesson, but like 2016, 2022, maybe we don't learn the lesson. It just keeps happening, and they find other things and people to blame.
Yeah, well, there's plenty of ways to point fingers. Jonathan, outstanding call to kick off the show here on a Wednesday on KCMO, 913-408-7957. I'll get to more of this company at some point later this morning, probably next hour, but Axiom, who ran the Yes campaign, I mean, they got their butts smoked yesterday. Axiom, one of the biggest political consultants, especially with Republicans in the country, just got crushed. I mean, they've had a terrible run this year. Jeff Rowe runs the operation. They ran Ron DeSantis' presidential campaign. How'd that work out? You ever see someone do less with more than the Ron DeSantis campaign? And then they had $3 million to spend on this campaign in Jackson County, and they just got blown out by 16 points. I mean, holy cow, talk about having to go back to the drawing board. That's what Axiom should be doing. What an embarrassment of a performance for them. I don't know how they became what they became, but holy smokes. If I'm running for office, I know who I'm not hiring based on what they've been doing this year. Jeez. 913-408-7957. Let's go to John. He's in Independence. What's up, John? Good morning.
Good morning, Pete. Hey, man, at least I've got a fabulous collection of flyers that came in the mail.
Hang on to him, baby. Maybe you can, John's got his.
I'll make a poster and hang it on my wall.
That's right. Remember when? Pass it down to the grandkids,
All right. Well, no, it's the economy. Everything came down to the economy. People can't afford to do anything anymore because of Biden and his, screw-up of our economy. And I think that was more of a protest vote for that than anything else.
Thank you very much, John. It's an excellent point. I do think that the economics of the moment played a huge role in this. And I wrote about this in a long Twitter post yesterday. I'm glad I got Twitter Premium or X Premium, whatever they call it, because now I can bold words and italicize and write long posts. It's been a good investment for me. I'm not going to lie. Instead of doing like 5 posts as a thread. So I wrote about this in part last night, and I said it was before the vote was the polls were closed. And I wrote about how the vote no side was more, in my anecdotal experience, more middle working class, and that these are folks who are less likely to go to games. The 3-cent sales tax is not necessarily a huge deal, but they're people who have been squeezed the most by inflation. They've been crushed by this county on the tax assessment debacle. They have not been able to participate as much in the rocket ship that is the equity markets, as the concentration of wealth has exploded to the top 1%. Since 2020, the wealth of the top 1% has risen by almost $15 trillion. That's up 30% in 4 years. The average guy's not feeling that. And then the same people who are part of that 1% who have seen an explosion in wealth are the same ones saying to you, we need your money. There were compelling reasons to vote yes, but do not discount that, yes, there are people who voted no because they didn't want to go downtown. They like the K, but don't discount the economics of the environment that we're living in. And the Biden administration is undoubtedly destroying the middle class by pursuing their modern monetary theory. It's hurting the people at the middle class level it claims to be helping. Now, of course, KC tenants, they would tell you more government, more socialism, more crazy is the answer here and the way forward. I completely disagree with that. Of course, you know where I'm at on some of those issues. But it's indisputable that the middle class is getting burnt. We're becoming a country and a culture of haves and have-nots. And that's dangerous because it creates class warfare. And class warfare is not the reason the vote went down yesterday, but it was an element of why the vote went down yesterday. And it's part of the populist trends that are continuing to encapsulate our politics, both locally, statewide, and nationally. And that's not ending anytime soon. Now, listen, if Trump gets in there, the economy straightens out, inflation gets knocked down, people start feeling better about themselves, the teams have a better chance next year if that ends up happening. If it doesn't, we'll see. 913-408-7957. We'll get to more of you and also the mistakes around the threats. All coming up here on a busy Wednesday on 95.7 FM KCMO. It's one of the many things we'll look back on and say, boy, what if? I don't believe that the teams would have gotten a yes vote across the finish line had they not talked about the potential of evaluating all options if the yes vote doesn't go through. But over the last few weeks, there was a bubbling of enthusiasm on the no side. And there were multiple reasons for the no vote being enthusiastic and wanting to get out to the polls. And it won last night 58-42 if you're just joining us. It was a blowout defeat for a vote yes campaign that had every rock star athlete in this town, two of the most powerful organizations in this town, some of the most powerful political voices in this town, and it went down in utter flames. And these people are going to sit around their tables today and they're going to wonder why. And they're going to sit there and they're going to say to themselves, geez, what do these people not understand? Don't they realize what we're trying to do for them? That's what they're going to do. They're going to completely misread what this was all about. And why, in part, the average run-of-the-mill citizen in Jackson County, who has been screwed time after time in many respects in recent months, especially with the property tax assessment debacle, then they basically got threatened down the home stretch. And people didn't like it. People didn't care for it. People did not want to hear it. They didn't want to hear about how if you don't give the most privileged in their community what they want, they're leaving. That's not what they're about. And that's across the political spectrum. That's a left and a right thing. They unified in many respects the left and the right by playing this card. It was a bad card to play, and the political consultants tried to convince them it was the right card to play. And they were wrong. And, Frank White has not done a good job as county executive. I've been very critical of him and how he's handled a lot of things in this county, but he did get this right last night when he talked to Channel 9.
I think what needs to happen is to get the right people at the table, get the auxiliary folks out of the way, know who you're dealing with, sit down, do the deal, and keep moving. I think that there's been a love for these teams for a long time from the taxpayers of Jackson County, and I think that they deserve more than just to say, if you don't pass this tax, we're going to leave. And with 7 years left on the lease, that makes it even sound worse. So people don't like to be threatened for their money, and I think now that the people have spoken, hopefully, like I say, everybody can take a deep breath, understand where we were, understand where we're trying to go, and get to the table and work out a deal that's best for the county, the citizens, and for the teams themselves.
Now, that was Frank White last night on Channel 9 KMBC. What are you laughing at Frank for, John?
I get to go home on my bingo card. I had Frank saying he listens to the people.
Yeah. No, that is comical.
So,
that is comical.
Thank you.
Frank is not listening to the people. If he did, he would have fired his county assessor months ago. Yeah, I'm going to get to more of Frank in particular coming up at 7 o'clock. But at least he did have one salient point there when he noted people don't like to be threatened for their money, and that's true. 913-408-7957. John is in Kansas City. Hey, John, good morning.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
I got you there, John. What's happening, buddy?
Hey, I think your points are you're on point with everything you said, and I agree with it. But I do see a possible, in the thread I think was terrible, but I'm a native of Kansas. I live in Missouri now and in Jackson County, and I voted no. But I think that in the long run, the Royals and Chiefs will move to Kansas because of the star bonds they have, won't be involved in any taxes. And I think that Laura Kelly or whoever would be the governor at the time will offer a deal they can't refuse, because I don't think Eastern Jack's going to vote for the Royals to go downtown. And so eventually I think they're just going to have to take the best offer, and that offer is going to be in Kansas, which I'm glad to have. I'll be glad to have. I'm a native of Kansas, and so I think eventually that's where the Royals and Chiefs are going to end up.
John, there's definitely going to be a time, thank you, my man, there's definitely going to be a time when that becomes part of the conversation. I don't think it's today. I predict another go-around for these teams in Jackson County, in Kansas City. I think that's going to come back to the table. If it were to fail again, then maybe you look to the other side of the state line. And we could talk about the star bonds and the state of Kansas and all those different things and how that might play into the equation here. But remember this. Clark Hunt, and he talked about it a lot. That stadium means everything to him, his family, his late father. And for the Royals, they've been insistent that downtown baseball is where they need to be. That's the economics of the sport right now. It's downtown, it's power and light, it's all these different things. It's hotels, it's, commercial real estate, it's apartments. And, how many people want to do that sitting out at the Legends? Boy, that field looks great out there. And I don't mean the baseball field, I mean the farm field. What? And I hope Kansas doesn't do it. I don't want Kansas to do it. And I say that as a resident. I don't think it's good to be pitting these states against each other. Let Jackson County, let the state of Missouri, let Kansas City, Missouri try to work this thing through with the team. I don't want to see the Kansas taxpayer get fleeced on the other side. Well, if you can't screw the Missouri taxpayer, let's go to the other side. I don't want to see that. I don't want anyone getting screwed in this region. People just want a deal that works for all sides. And it is the best deal possible and is transparent in nature and truly feels like it is a deal and a partnership, which the teams used that word a lot. They talked about partnerships and working together. But when push came to shove, for too many, it felt like extortion. 913-408-7957. Let's get back to you here on a busy Wednesday morning. John's in Grain Valley. What's happening, John?
Well, considering everybody just took my thunder and I'm stuck in traffic, it's pretty much a Wednesday now. But anyway, I think I just recently moved here, so I really didn't have a lot of chips on the table. I thought I was able to listen to you and others and read articles, and I think they grossly misread their base. And then what bothered me and a couple people I was talking to work about was exactly that. At the very, very end, they were lying. This was not a new tax. It was a renewal. So, yeah, it is going to be a new tax. And then number two, you come to me for hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars, and then you're going to threaten me? No. So I'm not going to vote for it. And, oh, by the way, if you say I'm going to pick up and move, good luck to you there. Because wherever you go to build the complex and stadium and all the infrastructure you're going to need, you're going to have to go to other citizens in other areas, whether it's Kansas, whether it's Nashville, wherever you want to go, pick your spot. You're going to have to put out a massive bonding issue to those people, and you're basically going to have to tell them, well, you're just going to have to do this because these other people didn't. Mm-hmm. Well, the cops are after me now, so I guess that's about all my rant.
Are they coming after you there, John? What are you doing?
Well, I think they found out that I was listening to Pete Mundo and I posted on his X page. Well, it's certainly a way to start the day.
Hey, you know what? You tell them that you're a fan of this show. They will get you.
I'm going to tell you I know you. I'm going to tell you that we're the best buddies.
Yeah, no, please do that. You'll get at least one get out of jail free card with that information. All right?
Right after they sign the ticket, yeah.
Yeah, the cops love us. Don't worry there, John. They'll take care of you, buddy. See you later.
Man.
All right, man. Be safe. Be safe there, John. I heard the sirens going off right as he's like, well, they got me. They're coming for me. 913-408-7957. There is a ton of reaction we're still going to get to with you here on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. Hang tight. We're hearing from you all morning long. This show, I didn't load this show up with guests because I really wanted to hear from you and get your reaction because, listen, you spoke yesterday. The odds were against you. The political power players in this town were not on your side, the no side. The money, the fame, the fortune in Kansas City was all on the yes side. I can't think of one, outside of, I guess, Frank White, but I'm not sure how much of that was Frank. Outside of Frank White, there wasn't one person in that stratosphere of fame, fortune, and wealth and political power that was on the no side. And you sent them home 16-point losers. You did that. And that's why you deserve the floor today. Because you spoke. And people completely misread what you wanted to have happen in this town and in this county. 913-408-7957. We'll continue here on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM, and stream us all morning on the KCMO Talk Radio app. 6:50, a morning after reaction show with you on KCMO Talk Radio. The no vote blows out the yes vote, 58-42, basically the same number in KCMO proper versus around the rest of Jackson County. And the political power players, the big money, the famous athletes were all on the vote yes side. And it didn't just lose. It got absolutely crushed. Steve is kicking it off here in Independence. Steve, good morning. You're on KCMO.
Good morning. Kind of how I see it, I don't believe the ballot was even structured properly. There should have been two questions on the ballot. One question should have been talking about building a new stadium for Kansas City Royals downtown. The other question should have been the Kansas City Chiefs need some additional funding for some improvements. Okay, here's how I would have voted if those two questions were on the ballot. Kansas City Royals, downtown Kansas City, bing, no. The reason for that, You can't get down there. You can't find a parking spot now. You go down to the plaza in the wintertime, it takes you an hour to find a place to park. It's going to be the same thing going to the game. It takes quite a little while to park now up there at Kauffman Stadium. If they'd asked me if I'm going to vote for the Kansas City Chiefs improvement, yes, because there's a difference between the two teams. They shouldn't have been put together. The Kansas City Chiefs have been a lot more successful. They deserve maybe a little bit more funding to do some improvements. But if you take you take the Royals out of the complex, why should the Chiefs be binded together with this tax? Because they're not together when they separate them. It's crazy. Well, and then the last thing I'll say is everybody gets tired of hearing, oh, there's no new tax. It's not an addition. You're going to pay the same or whatever. Once they get a tax, they want to keep it going, and then they want to make you feel that it's not an additional tax. It is a tax, and that's all I have to say. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, Steve. Listen, I think if they were separate, the Chiefs absolutely would have passed. The Royals would not have passed. But they're on the same ballot because the tax is set up for both of them to share. So, and frankly, I think the Chiefs wanted to help out the Royals and try to drag this thing across the finish line. And even with back-to-back Super Bowls, the league MVP, Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift, they couldn't do it. I don't think Taylor Swift could have cut an ad. It wouldn't have passed. The Swifties couldn't have got this thing done. I don't care what anybody says. You got a 16-point blowout. Jeff Rowe at Axiom, they could have gotten Taylor Swift at every damn billboard in this town. And I don't think it would have made a difference. Because it wasn't about rich, famous people and politicians and going rah-rah team. It wasn't about that. It was about so much more. Mike's in Gardner. Hey, Mike, good morning.
Morning, Pete. Excellent show as usual. I had a family brunch after Palm Sunday services, and everybody was talking about this, and there was a huge comment. I mean, it just stuck in my head. How can I vote for a tax for a venue that I can't even afford to go to? And they've lost touch with the common person. The Biden tax that we're dealing with right now is inflation. You can go to any grocery store, and before Biden became president, you can see a family with kids, and they'll fill up their shopping cart and all kinds of stuff, and they can get out of there with a reasonable amount of cost. And nowadays you see people go through the grocery store with very little in their basket, and they're picking and choosing because it costs so much. Mm-hmm. And it just astounded me. I mean, I knew right then and there when this discussion happened, this was going to be a blowout because people cannot afford to go to these venues with what's going on in our economy right now with Biden taxes.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mike. I think I wrote about that yesterday on my Twitter X page. Follow me there at Pete Mundo. You can see it. I wrote a long post about this, and I won't read the whole thing, but I wrote here in part, after spending months on this story and talking to hundreds on both sides, my anecdotal experience is that the upper middle class to wealthy are big vote yes people. They go to games. They're not bothered by a 3/8-cent sales tax. They're college educated. They're higher earners. They haven't really been impacted by inflation. And they don't even really understand the vote no side. It's not entirely their fault. They're just caught up in their own bubble in many respects. Paul's in Kansas City. Hey, Paul, good morning.
Hey, Pete. Battle damage assessment. When Frank White says that he wants to get some new people, that's a shot at Manny Arbaca, who thinks he's the shadow county executive. And who
hey, listen, if one of the good parts of vote no is Manny Abarca on the county legislature gets shamed into basically, never being a part of anything meaningful in this town again, that would be a win.
Totally agree with you. And then he has a meltdown. He says, well, I wouldn't blame him if they go over to Kansas. What kind of leader is that for the county?
Did Manny Abarca, did he say that?
I'm paraphrasing. He did. He came out. He was on the sidewalk in that fancy building where all the elites were at. He says, well, I wouldn't blame him if they go over to Kansas.
Listen, that guy is such a turd. He's a wannabe big shot in this town. He's run for office. He thinks he's somebody. He's desperate for attention. He's the guy who got shoved in the lockers back in middle school, and now he's trying to make up for it by running for office. He's not a serious person, and you meet him after 5 minutes, he's got the depth and the smarts of a squirrel.
Yeah, when I went to his town hall in December and I had my taxation and stuff shirt on, I could see the look when he looked at me. And that's fine. I agree. We come from different perspectives. But the other thing is they underestimated the rural vote here in Jackson County. I'm in southern Jackson County, eastern county. The turnout there was amazing, and early voting. I voted early. I think the thing was done way before the day of voting. Yeah, it was but they underestimated that's something to watch, too, in the upcoming is the rural vote here in the county. It was, I think, 13,000 no vote difference for the rural part of the county. So, but I'll be interested to see what you say with Quentin Lucas because he took a hit, too, yesterday.
He did. He should have never gotten involved. I don't know why he put his neck out there. Thank you, Paul. I don't know why Quentin Lucas came out over the weekend and endorsed vote yes. I think his ego, by the way, got in the way. Like, there was research, there was polling done that showed it was neck and neck, which means it was probably really losing because the pollsters that did it were the folks on the vote yes side. And if it's neck and neck when Patrick Mahomes is trying to advocate for it, if you're Quentin Lucas, stay the hell out of this thing, man. What are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah, to Paul's point, they were talking about, Manny was saying if he were Governor Kelly, he'd be on the phone.
Oh,
I heard him say that. Yeah.
What a loser. What an absolute loser. 913-408-7957. It's Reaction Morning After with you. 7:05 Morning After. What an outcome that was last night. 58-42 vote no, crushing vote yes in Jackson County on the stadium sales tax issue, of course, for the 3/8 cent. Split between the teams. Chiefs making upgrades. Royals going downtown. And this is, as I've noted, as fascinating an election as I've covered at any level. Because the political power players, the money, the famous athletes were all on one side. And you, the citizen, told them to pound sand. I've said for weeks there were compelling cases on the vote yes and the vote no side. I thought it was going to be a coin flip. I thought ultimately the Chiefs, the success on the field, Patrick Mahomes, was going to help drag this thing across the finish line by maybe a point or two, by the smallest of margins. And it became very obvious last night that that was not going to happen. When the Kansas City election boards came in and it was 58-42 no in KC-Mo proper, it was basically game, set, match. And the rest of the county almost mirrored that at 58-42, which was the final outcome. Now, Frank White is doing some cartwheels here. Frank White, the Jackson County executive, was the main person on the vote no side when it came to those in political power in this community. But trust me, this has nothing to do with Frank White. In many respects, Frank White can take credit for the no vote, but not for the reasons that he thinks. Frank White is of the belief that he has the political swagger and cachet to get a county to do as he pleases. He's probably waking up this morning. I'd love to have him on the show, but he won't come on. I mean, we can get on Mark Donovan, John Sherman. We can get on all these people. We can't get on Frank White. Frank's waking up, having his coffee today, and he's convinced that he's got the political juice and the political muscle to get the county voter to do as they please and do what he wants. In many respects, he did that, but not for the reasons that he thinks. Frank White and the county's handling of the assessments from last year played a role in this. Now, it's weird to think that Frank White, who is at fault for the assessment debacle, no one has paid any kind of price, whether it's politically or with their job or otherwise, for the debacle of an assessment from last year. Frank White has whistled past the graveyard on the assessment debacle. And that's a big reason I believe a lot of people turned out and said, no, you're not getting more of my tax dollars. Even if you want to say it's just an extension, it's not more of your tax dollars, a message was sent by thousands of Jackson County residents who did not feel like their voices have been heard, who felt like they have gotten screwed on their taxes here over the last few months. And frankly, a lot of people on the vote yes side misread this situation. Because one, they're not Jackson County residents. Two, if they are, they're of means where it doesn't really impact them if their property taxes went up $1,000. Three, they're consultants who don't even live in the area. They misread the marketplace. They showed up. They put together their pretty flyers. They threw the star athletes on there. They tossed in and sprinkled in a couple of threats at the end. You don't want to lose your teams now, do you? And they thought it would work. And the taxpayer told them to pound sand. But it's not because of Frank White. It's not. Frank White does not get any credit for the no vote winning. He does. I mean, I'll say he does, but not for the reasons that he thinks. He gets credit because his county is such a disaster that people were fed up with their tax situation and went out and voted no. But not because Frank told them to vote no, but because he screwed his taxpayer in so many respects over the last few months that they have been fed up with giving more money to the government or giving more money to sports teams. They don't want to do it. 913-408-7957. 913-408-7957 is how you join us on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. Let's go to Mark. Chris in Liberty's next up. Hey, Chris, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Pete. Hey, the two reasons that I voted no, and trust me, I actually want a stadium downtown. I think it could do some really amazing things for the economy, and it's really close to me. But the two reasons I voted no, and I think most of Kansas City did as well, is one, the current state of the economy in Kansas City. Like the guy said on the phone a little bit ago, is like when you go to the grocery store, people are struggling. You know, and I'm just a common man with a family of four. And so you see that they just have no pulse of what Kansas City is currently going through with inflation, real estate, taxes. People are struggling. And the last thing they're going to vote for is a hike in taxes. And then the second reason I think people voted no is there is no plan, right? It's just, hey, we want to build this new building, vote yes for it. But there was no plan behind it. It's almost like a Biden campaign. You know, there's nothing there, but we want you to vote for me, right? No, you know, that's why I think the people of Kansas City just said no.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it, too. I think they didn't like the rollout. Listen, don't forget, we didn't find out about the Crossroads plans until after the thing was on the ballot. We were told we'd have an answer back in September. It didn't happen. Not only did it not come in September, it didn't come in October. It didn't come in November. It didn't come in December. It came with weeks to go until the election. And then you caused the firestorm by doing the whole Crossroads thing, which I thought was a bit overblown. I think the Crossroads is actually a better site than the East Village, which is no man's land. Like, of those two options, I think they picked the better site in terms of uniting downtown, not creating an entertainment district that is basically competition to Power and Light, which already loses $20 million a year. The taxpayer has to fund that. So I don't think that is necessarily a bad choice. But they didn't see the blowback coming from the Crossroads district either. And I admit, I didn't necessarily see that one as much. If there's one thing I probably overlooked, it was the blowback that ultimately came from the Crossroads. But that's also not the reason this thing lost. There's about half a dozen things you'll point to. And if history's telling this thing right, it won't be one thing and one thing only. Steve is on KCMO. He's in Oak Grove. Steve, go ahead. Good morning.
Well, you kind of stole my thunder. Anecdotally, I live in rural Jackson County. My personal property taxes, along with my neighbors, went up between 200% and 300%. So, real warm feelings towards Jackson County to start with. The second thing that really bothered me was when they trot out Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, George Brett, none of which live in Jackson County. And third, something I don't think anybody's really hit on, John Sherman is not the most sympathetic of characters. A lot of people just don't like him. And that's all I've got.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. John Sherman, when you actually talk to him, is a pretty easy to like guy. I've said for weeks that John Sherman being a more outward, visible face and voice would have been better for the campaign than having paid minions running around town on his behalf. You know, I think that he's said on this show, he's like, you know, these things of threats, like, I've never talked about threats. He's an easy guy to like. He's done a lot of great things for this community. He's had a tremendous amount of success. I don't begrudge anybody for having success. I mean, that's the American dream. He's not an arrogant owner. He's not one of these guys that appears wildly out of touch. But there were a lot of people around the vote yes that were not really, I think, looking out for his best interests or going about it the right way. Former politicians, people, you know, who've got certain bones to pick with certain groups, weren't doing any favors for him. I think if he was more visible, and I said this before today, this isn't Monday Morning Quarterback, and I've been saying this for months. An easy guy, right, John? I've been saying this for a long time.
I agree with you. He's the last guy to be on Shark Tank.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
He's not Mark Cuban. And that kind of thing.
No, it's not.
And he would help himself to come forward more, for sure.
He's an easy guy to like. Doesn't come off like a stuck-up, arrogant billionaire owner. He just comes off like, you know, yeah, he's a guy. He's also a Kansas Cityan. And I think he's intent on keeping this team here, despite the fact that sports talk guys are melting down. They're going to Nashville. You don't know what you're talking about. 913-408-7957. We're continuing with your reaction after last night's shocking vote here on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM and the KCMO Talk Radio app. On the text line, 913-408-7957. Pete, your caller's got to get their facts straight. Andy Reid lives in Jackson County, and it's not a tax increase, just an extension. I'm not going to beat a dead horse on this thing. And first off, yes, Andy was at the polls yesterday. But listen, we know there's a lot of players that don't ultimately live in Jackson County. Whether it's the majority or not, I don't know. I would venture to guess it is the majority that don't live in Jackson County. But either way, when it comes to the tax increase, it's the same old story. You call it what you want. All I know is this deal was set to expire in 31. It then would go for another 40 years. If someone was loaning you $100 a month for 24 months, and then at the end of the term they said, hey, can you loan me $100 for another 36 months? And you said, well, that's more money out of my pocket. I'm not sure I want to do that. And you said to them, well, it's only $100 a month. That's what you've been paying me anyway. That's the loan you've been giving me. You've been giving me this money. What's the big deal? Well, yeah, but I agreed to 24 months, not another 36. You can call it an extension if you want. You can. But technically, based on how the deal was set up, if you thought it was going to expire and it technically was set to expire, then it is, yes, a new tax. Now, that's not the reason it lost. There's a lot of reasons it lost. But it's getting into the semantics of the whole thing. You can't just say, well, it's just an extension, it's not an increase. No, it's what you want it to be. It can be either or, depending how you frame it.
Our texter can consider us an oasis. We can lead the horses to the water, but we can't always make them drink.
Yeah,
ain't that the truth? Have brought that up.
Ain't that the truth? 913-408-7957. 58-42, the no vote wins out. Jeremy in Grain Valley next up. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Pete, good morning. You've kind of danced around it a little bit in regards to the Jackson County property tax deal, but I think the final nail in the coffin was the fact that 2 weeks ago, the city council voted unanimously to use that same property assessment firm again for the 24-25 tax season.
What's that firm name? Why am I blanking on them?
I'm right there with you. I can't remember the name of it, but they voted unanimously across the board to use that firm again.
The the county legislature did?
Yep.
See, I didn't know that. Do you think that was really universally known, Jeremy? Because I didn't know that. Maybe it was known at the grassroots level in Jackson County. I don't know if that was really well-known information.
I've been working in Illinois and Michigan for the last 3 months, and I've been kind of out of the loop. But, I mean, if my dumb butt can figure it out, surely a lot of these other country bumpkins that they call us can too. But it just goes to one thing after another. You can't afford to go to the ballpark. You can't afford to do anything. They're going to move it downtown. People are tired of paying for crap. Mm-hmm. And when, like you said earlier, when the county's pulling this stuff with your taxes, people are just done.
Yeah.
And it's not that we want the Royals to leave. It's not that we want the Chiefs to leave. You charge $60 a car to park your vehicle, times that by, 20,000 cars? Why can't you afford to pay for your own damn stadium?
Listen, that's a major talking point, a major point that has been brought up extensively, you're right, over the last bunch of weeks. And it ties into the economic climate we find ourselves in right now. Inflation is eating away at everyday regular citizens. Those at the higher end are not feeling it. They don't get it. They don't understand that sentiment that is out there. And the Yes campaign wildly missed the mark on it. Nola's in South Kansas City. Go ahead, Nola. Good morning. You're on KCMO.
Hi, Pete. Thank you. There's so many people that are still devastated by the assessment mess. And when we saw the coalition forming, when KC Tenants got on board with this, while those of us on the conservative side were very concerned about the vote, I felt like it was like a few years ago with the health research sales tax, which we soundly voted down. And then anyone who had any business downtown in the last recent times during any big events couldn't get a parking spot. So then yesterday when we were handing out flyers at the polling place, big turnout, despite the terrible weather for an election day, you knew that only the determined were coming. And so we're looking forward to future victories for conservative issues here in Kansas City. Like we're looking forward to seeing you on July the 13th at our Jackson County Republican Committee dinner.
Well, Nola, I would just say this. Don't look into any of this too much for any kind of conservative movement or conservative cause. Kansas City voted 58-42 no. If you are looking at this from a left-wing perspective or a right-wing perspective, you are totally missing the mark here. It's not about conservatism. It's not about the KC Tenants socialism winning out. Anyone who's looking at this and trying to make it fit their perfect political blueprint, with all due respect, is missing the point and missing the mark. That's not what this election was about. I mean, when KC Tenants comes together with more conservative folks and they vote the same way, it's weird. But it's not because either side has some great point or great future. I don't think Jackson County Republicans are going to do better because of this vote. I don't think the socialists of KC Tenants are going to do better because of this vote. This was a perfect storm and wildly unique and transcended both political movements. I just love seeing guys that don't know what they're talking about because they do sports talk and they don't really know local issues and real issues and local politics and things like that, be so far out of their lane on this stuff. And that's a large part of the story this morning. So I guess some of the sports guys are going off saying, this is outrageous. Only 24% of people showed up to vote, and they're deciding for the rest of us. Hey, you should see a city election there, chump. I think it was 10% of people showed up for the city elections last year. Mm-hmm. You got 2.5 times that yesterday, or during this cycle, including early voting. That's actually pretty good.
Yeah, I was hoping like 90,000 to 100,000. It was way more than that.
135, right,
yeah.
John?
Yeah, that was what I added up the totals for the yes-no.
That's 135,000 people. That's a pretty damn good turnout, 24%. You know, you take that on most local elections, every election. You should see how Kansas City's run when 10% of people show up to city council races.
Frank White won.
Yeah, Frank White won back in 2022, got reelected amazingly.
Maybe had 70,000 voters.
Maybe, but it's like, come on. This is like how it goes in local elections. And if you're that outraged, by the way, of, wait, 24,000 people or 24% of voters in Jackson County decided this for the rest of us, then go move to Jackson County. Like, if you're that intent on keeping the teams here and I need a vote and by golly, I better get my vote and my voice heard, then go move to Jackson County. I don't know what else to tell you. Meantime, you did have both folks involved yesterday speak. John Sherman, haven't played this clip yet. Here was John Sherman, owner of the Royals, talking last night about the vote going down 58-42.
We won a baseball game tonight, but we didn't win this. You know, we respect the democratic process. We respect the voters of Jackson County and the results of the election today. We're deeply disappointed as we are steadfast in our belief that Jackson County is far better off with the Chiefs and the Royals. This is a belief that I hold both professionally and personally as someone whose roots run deep in this town, as someone who has been a dedicated fan, a season ticket holder for both of these teams, and now leading a remarkable ownership group assembled for its ties to Kansas City. We thank all those who worked on this election for their time and commitment. They are here in this room and well beyond. They know who they are. We will take some time to reflect on and process the outcome and find a path forward that works for the Royals and our fans. Thank you.
I have no problem with that statement, none whatsoever. We're going to work on an outcome that works for our team and our fans. When he says the fans, that's important. That implies this is not about leaving, not about going anywhere. If he just said we're going to do what's in the best interest or, go through the process again for the team and didn't include the word fans, that would have been a shot. But by including the fans, he's clearly saying, because there's Royals fans in Kansas City, there's not a lot of Royals fans in Nashville and Austin and Salt Lake City. He's saying this is about committing to this team in this town. And that's a very important message to send. And there's got to be a lot of humble pie that is being eaten this morning by a lot of people involved who misread the situation. And, that's not just the people with the teams. That's those with the Yes campaign, the political consultants, the legal consultants, the faces that they put in front of you in Kansas City, who completely misread the mark on so much of this for a plethora of reasons. Not just because of, a 3/8 cent sales tax, but also because of not wanting to go downtown for a ballpark, not loving the plans, getting hosed on tax assessments. I got this on Twitter. Pete, my escrow payment went up hundreds of dollars a month. I'm voting against everything forever. Don't discount that. Especially when the average American right now, including here in Kansas City, is paying $11,000 more a year for the same lifestyle they had 4 years ago due to inflation. It's a message that is getting sent across the political spectrum. And, the people that were caught up on the yes side in their own bubble misread that. And that's why I thought this was going to be a coin flip either way. Let's start with Leonard. He's in Shawnee. What's up, Leonard? Good morning.
Good morning. Pete, the Chiefs and the Royals have no one else to blame but themselves. When they first unveiled this and they had Frank White out there front and center, they think that the voters forgot how they were roughshod over their tax and their due process when people were putting their taxes up so much, 13.9%, so it doesn't trigger an audit. And to me,
Leonard, hold on. Let me just stop you right there. Let me slow you down because they were never really partners with Frank White. Frank White is not someone the teams really like right now.
Yeah, I know. I think Frank White loved the fact that he was out there, but when they unveiled it, when the Chiefs went out there, he was sitting there. And I think that was an unforced error on their part because just showing him in that interview, the initial one, I just think it rubbed the voters the wrong way, especially the suburban voters, because they came out to vote. It's not like voting for a mayor or Frank White. These people said, I have a voice and I haven't forgotten the past. And I think that they got basically just too confident. And I feel that if they do this again, then they're going to have an outside company come in and say, hey, this is the way you do it.
No, that's what they just did, Leonard. That's what they just did. They just had an outside consulting company come in and they got their clocks cleaned.
Okay. Okay, I'm corrected on that.
No, I love you. I love you. Thank you, buddy. I love you. But I'm just pointing out, they literally just had a company that doesn't understand what's been going on the ground in this county, in this town, in Axiom Strategies, a big consulting firm that works heavily with the Republican Party. Jeff Rowe, they started here in Kansas City. They ran Ted Cruz's presidential campaign, Glenn Youngkin in Virginia, Ron DeSantis. They ran that thing into the ground. So they did that, and they bombed out. So, no, that is not the answer. And, Frank White, they really weren't buddy-buddy with. They were banging heads with Frank White for months. Alfonso in Blue Springs. What's happening, Alfonso?
I kind of think people are missing the bigger picture. I think the Royals lost because of the location. And I think the Chiefs has told us they're leaving. They want us to make a 40-year commitment to remodel a 50-year-old stadium. 50-year-old stadium. I think as a girl dad, I equate it to have my daughter having a boyfriend for 3 years, and her asking to get serious, and he asked her to move in and not marry him. The Chiefs are leaving. I think they're going to Gardner or South Johnson County here in the near future.
Okay. All right. I don't think that's going on. I don't think that's happening.
Take over the old Great Mall location over there in South Olathe.
Yeah, Mark's been pushing for that years. Mark wants to be able to, roll to bed and walk to the stadium. That's what he wants.
I'll take a bird scooter.
Yeah, that's right. No.
ODAC's pretty nice. Nice complex.
No, I listen, I respect it, Alfonso. I don't think that's what's going on. Clark Hunt has talked about what that stadium and that venue means to him, his family, obviously his late father. I don't think they want that. I don't. I think they realize what they've got there at Arrowhead. So I don't think that's what this is about. And I don't want to hear about, some people are saying, well, Kansas, got to go for them, get those star bonds involved. Stop with the Kansas thing. So Kansas is going to get fleeced. We're just going to pit taxpayer against taxpayer in this region. We've done that for far too long. Mike and Olathe, what's up?
Hey, man, I'm listening to this, and I think about when the thing was built, when that complex was built, and people in Jackson County could afford to go. Everybody went. We all went to games. It was affordable. And I think about how it was then and how it is now. And you've got a county voting, and I don't know what the percentage is of people that actually go to the stadium and go and spend the money to a Royals game and all this stuff because it's expensive for parking. And they're voting on something that everybody in the surrounding area uses, and we have no say. And so I think about I lived in Arlington for 10 years where they built Jerry World, and they've already built a second Globe Stadium field, our ballpark in right there. And I'm thinking, I know you're poo-pooing the idea of them wanting to move. I don't think Clark wants to move. I think he'd just as soon, if nothing else, worst-case scenario, sweep the whole thing and build a brand-new one right there on the site because it's Arrowhead in this location. But I do believe there's something to the fact that they may have to move because they have to go where the money is, I guess, because it's
no. But there is no money, Mike. The only money is our money, the taxpayers' money. The money's not falling out of the sky. And if Kansas is dumb enough to play that game, shame on them.
I know that, but where I guess I look at how long it took for us to get the airport, and we needed one 10 years, a decade ago. I see the same thing happening, and I don't think it's the same exact thing because it's a different animal. But at the same time, I'm going, what is the solution? Did the Rams guy, did Kroenke spend more money? Did Jones spend more money? It'd be interesting to know that. But I do think that Sherman's the right guy. I think it's a whole different.
I think Sherman is. I totally agree, Mike. I think Sherman is the right guy. I don't think this.
I don't know the answer. How do we overcome this?
Okay, I will answer that for you. All right, I got a break. How do we overcome this? What is the answer? I will do that with you and answer it coming up next, right after the break on 95.7 FM KCMO, and stream us on your Alexa, your Google Home, and the KCMO Talk Radio app. What are you laughing at in there?
Lots of calls today, which is great, right?
Yeah.
I'm just surprised no one's called in and said, hey, I voted in Belton. We're getting a new police station. Woo! Or Raymore, Yeah. We seems to be on one topic today.
Well, and with all due respect, I have no idea who won any of the school board races last night.
I was watching at a quick glance. Mother-in-law surveys results trickled in. I thought, how many tax things will go down as people send their statements? Guess what?
Yeah.
I only saw one in Belton go down. I think that was the e-tax on the internet, I believe.
Oh, yeah, I saw that one.
And then this one.
Yeah.
And then everybody else voted to build the school, build the police station, get the new sewers.
It's funny how that goes, right? So Mike asked me right before the break, as many of you have, what's the answer? How do you fix this to try to get a better outcome going forward? Are they just going to run to Kansas? Are they going to start looking elsewhere? They're going to dig their heels in and say, gosh, we had a great deal for the taxpayer, and they screwed us, and they voted this down 58-42, and they don't know what's best for them. If they do that, this will never get better. The first thing to do is for the teams, not their, minions that they surrounded themselves with, the teams, to acknowledge what just happened. To realize that they literally had Patrick Mahomes on their side. The most beloved figure in this town possibly ever. They put him on their flyers, and they got smoked by 16 points. Ask yourself why. Acknowledge that first and foremost. And realize there's not one thing that's going to fix it. People are upset about the timelines as when they were rolled out, the announcements when they came, how close they were to Election Day. They're upset with their own tax situation. They don't like their property tax deals. You have people, obviously, with issues in the crossroads and how that was going to play out and all the changes that were coming down at the 11th hour. What they need to do, and I know they don't want to do this because there's not a lot of love left between Frank White and the teams. But what they first need to do is realize that going back to that table in Jackson County with Frank White, with a couple of, the sports commissioners who are very much tied in and know what's going on. And I know some of these people closely and know that they're smart people looking out for the best interests of, yes, the teams, but also the taxpayers. Get them back to the table and say, let's pretend like the last 6 to 12 months didn't happen. I know it's hard, especially when you have people with this level of success, with this level of ego. But let's pretend like the last 6 to 12 months didn't happen. And let's start from scratch. What do we need? What is going to make us all feel better about this situation? What can the Royals do to alleviate some of the concerns people have about going downtown for baseball? Because that's obviously a large faction of people who voted no. What does that look like? How do we solve that issue? Talk to more of the Crossroads people. Try to get through to them on why this is a win for them by going down there. Do all of this, and then, of course, make the appeal out to Eastern Jack in some respects as well. What that looks like, whether it's community-based meetings. If you go to a community meeting and you set something up in Lee Summit, you're less likely to have the socialist goobers from KC Tenant show up than if you do something, in the Crossroads or anywhere in KCMO proper. Talk to regular people. Hear them out. And then the icing on the cake, and I don't expect this to happen, but if you really want to talk about what's in it for me, the fan, because there's a common theme here that you've heard this morning and you've heard for weeks if you listen to this show. I'm voting no because I'm priced out of these games anyway. And that wasn't the case in 1974. It was not even as much the case in 2004, 2006. It is the case right now for a variety of reasons. What if these teams took a page out of Arthur Blank's book? He's the owner of the Atlanta Falcons. They have very cheap concessions down there. Arthur Blank has made a point to do that. He was involved with Home Depot out of the gates. That's where he made his money. And I don't know how much exactly they are in Atlanta, but they're very cheap. And you might think this is silly, but I really think this would go a long way for the teams to say, by the way, if and when this does pass, we're going back to whatever. $2 hot dogs. You don't have to go cheap on the beer because I know that you don't want people getting smashed at these games. But, make it appeal to more family-friendly folks and more, working stiffs who right now say, if I want to take a family of 4 to a baseball game, I got $25, $30 in parking. I got tickets. I got concessions. I'm in for a couple $100. That's not in the budget right now. Show you care. Do something. Have some big rollout like that. I'm not expecting it to happen. I'm not saying this is going to happen. But, man, you want to talk about getting some goodwill back into the equation? That'd be a great way to do it. 913-408-7957 is how you join us on KCMO Talk Radio. John is on KCMO in Lewisburg. Go ahead, John. Let it rip.
Pete, it's amazing. I'm amazed that the 95.7 signal reaches Phoenix, Arizona.
I don't get the joke, John.
No.
I've been listening to you online.
Oh,
and I
well,
love
thank
it.
you.
I'm
Thank
down
you
in
for
Phoenix.
listening. Thank you for listening
I'm
on the
down
stream.
in Phoenix.
Attaboy.
I've got
You're still in tune with what's going on. Good job, John.
Well, hell yeah. So I've got a little advice for John Sherman and Clark Hunt. And with everything going on in KCMO and Jackson County and the nation in total, a few words from Kenny Rogers. You've got to know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em, know when to walk away, know when to run. You never count your votes. When you're sitting at the table, there'll be time enough counting when the dealing's done. He's a cuckoo bird.
Thank you, John in Lewisburg. We appreciate you, buddy. 913-408-7957. Corey, go ahead.
Hey, good morning. So you were talking about cost. So over the last, 35 years, there's been 2 seasons where the Royals were actually competitive.
Yeah.
So the Royals wanted to go out there and build this nice brand new stadium, and there's no guarantee that they're going to be competitive. Even last year, they're on the back of they tied their worst season ever. So they're going to go out there and ask the voters to go give them a new stadium, and then they say, oh, hey, we're going to do a new stadium, but we're not going to put any planning into it, and the Kansas City fans are not going to get any convenience out of it. There's no convenience to going down there, and there's no parking. There's no way to get there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the plan was terrible from the beginning, and there's no guarantee that the citizens would get anything out of it in the first place. So if they had come and said, okay, we're going to do this plan, we're going to last year they went out and they spent $100 million. They're supposedly going to put a competitive team on the field, but they didn't give us any convenience. So the reason why it failed, Kansas Cityans above all want convenience. Look at the airport. Everybody said it's parking. Everybody wants convenience. So if you're not going to put a competitive team on the field, at least give us convenience. And they didn't do that either.
Corey, thank you very much. Appreciate you, man.